Hey guys, welcome to the Massive Iron Channel. I'm Steve Shaw. In this video, a word about toxic bodybuilding advice. Before I get into this topic, if you have any questions or comments, drop them down below. The best topic ideas I turn into videos just like this. If you need coaching, check out the link below. All right, so yesterday I made a video about Ryan Humiston, and somebody left a comment. I checked it through this morning. I pinned it at the top of that video because it's very, very important. And it's something I've discussed many times over the years. And this is it. And I want you guys to remember this when you're filtering advice, specifically from top level bodybuilders or guys that have built a lot of muscle. There is a toxicity, there is a cancer that goes hand in hand with the muscle building world, with the muscle building realm. And that is, guys will build a base one way. They will build a base of musculature. They will build a lot of strength using the basic compound movements and a reasonable amount of volume. All the things I teach, right? They'll build muscle. They'll build a base. They'll get the 90 to 95% of their base. And then all of a sudden, they'll kind of start to train differently. Now that they have a base is easier to maintain, right? A base is much easier to maintain. So now that they have a base, they'll start to train differently, a little bit more light with a little bit more focus on contraction, etc. And the point here is how you see a lifter train now. And when I say lifter, I'm talking specifically about muscle building. How you see a muscle head lifting now isn't generally how they built their base. And this is one of the most important points when we are talking about experienced lifters. Excuse me. How they built their base is not how they train now. It's very, very rarely the case. I did an interview with Sean Clarita about hypertrophy. Sean's competing at the 212 Mr. Olympia. And for Sean, he trains the same now as he did back then. He's the exception. Sean trains hard and heavy, but what happens is a lot of guys will build a base doing the stuff that I preach, and then they'll get to a point where that heavy weight becomes mentally and physically a little bit of a challenge. They'll pick up injuries because they don't have great form, the best form, etc., or they'll just kind of move to more contraction feel because it's easier to maintain muscle mass than it is to build it. So the point is that they can completely change their training and still maintain their muscle mass. That's an extremely, extremely important point. Now, I want to give you an example from a Mr. Olympia that I spoke to, Frank Zane. Years back, I did an interview with Mr. Olympia, Frank Zane, and Frank was talking about the odd lifts. Back in his day, excuse me, they had something they called the odd lifts, which are now the powerlifting lifts, what we consider the powerlifting lifts. So Frank would talk about how the lifters were doing odd lifts, which are basically squats, bench, and dead. And he built his base getting strong on these odd lifts. That's what Frank told me. Frank is known to be more a mind-muscle connection guy. So the point here is that Frank, in an interview, in a conversation with me, told me that he built 90 to 95% of his base training basically how I preach, training how every other major hypertrophy guy in the lifting industry talks about. The basics, right? Compound movements, progressive overload, a reasonable amount of volume, a reasonable exercise selection, consistency, etc. The basics, nothing fancy. Now, this doesn't say mind-muscle connection and contractions and time under tension, all this stuff can't have value. But the point of this video is that when you see an experienced muscle head talking about how they train and teaching how they train now, it's rarely what they use to build their base. And this is a very, very important point because what they're basically doing, you're looking at their program to maintain and refine, right? They have a body part that's lagging or whatever. That's more of a maintenance or refinement type of program, but that is not the program they use to build their base. Now, to contrast this, let's talk about powerlifting just for a second. When do you see a top-level West Side powerlifter or a top-level guy like the Lillibridges or whatever come along and basically position themselves as how I train now is how I built 95% of my strength? Powerlifting's the opposite. Powerlifting is like build your base, and then when you get more to the intermediate or late intermediate to advanced stages, then you evolve your training. You move on to more singles, doubles, triples, low rep stuff. There's a change. There's a broader perspective. That's something that lacks in the bodybuilding world. We treat all training programs equal. You know, we treat like an advanced program that's more to bring up lagging body parts or to maintain muscle mass without punishing the body. We start to frame that as something that we get the idea that this guy's been doing this his entire life, and that's complete nonsense. And I've seen it over and over and over again, because look, guys, I've been in this industry for a long time, and I've interviewed nearly everybody, sat with nearly everybody. Jay Cutler, Ronnie Coleman, trained with Ronnie Coleman, interviewed Frank Zane, all the major YouTube celeries, from the Hodge twins to Jerry Ward to God knows what, right? They've all been in my office. I've all talked with them. I've all trained with them. Anybody that you can imagine. And the thing is, when I hear somebody talk about a specific, very unique training system like Mike Mentzer's heavy duty, or some system they do now that's more contraction and you know, angle focus and all this bodybuilding stuff, that stuff can have a place. But the thing is, when I dig deeper, I realize that how they train now isn't how they built 90 to 95% of their muscle base. And that's an important point you guys need to know when you filter all this cesspool of nonsense that floats out in the muscle building world. So guys, hope this video has been of some help. If you have any questions or comments, drop them down below. If you made it this far in this video and have yet to subscribe to my channel, please do. I'd appreciate the support. So guys, as always, thanks for watching. Have a great day.